On November 26, Morphisec prevented a then unknown ransomware attack, successfully protecting a customer with over 10,000 endpoints and servers. While the ransomware successfully bypassed the leading next-gen AV and EPP solutions installed by the customer, Morphisec was installed in parallel and thwarted the attack. Over the next 12 minutes, Nadav Lorber, Security Research Team Lead, and Oren Voskin, Product Marketing Director, will get you up to speed on this previously unidentified variant of the Babuk ransomware, how Morphisec detected and prevented the attack, and much, much more.
Hello, everyone. And I hope you can all hear me well. My name is Oren Voskin. I'm the Product Marketing Director at Morphisec, and I'm really thrilled to be joined by Nadav Lorber, our Security Research Team Lead. Nadav has over 8 years of experience in cybersecurity, previously with the Israeli Defense Forces. Now, we're here together today to talk about a significant new research. So on Saturday, November 26th, Morphisec was notified. We received an alert from our customer, a high priority alert. We analyzed that alert and found out that we've been able to prevent a new string, a new variant of the Babuk ransomware. So a new variant that was previously unseen. And this webinar is dedicated for that analysis. So we'll do a short overview of the incident. The main part of the session will be devoted to Nadav and a technical analysis. And of course, we'll be glad to answer questions about this incident. So a few words about the attack and what happened. So our customer, the Morphisec customer, is a multinational manufacturing company, quite large scale, of over 10,000 endpoints and systems and servers. The ransomware evaded the endpoint security solutions used by the customer, a next-gen AV and an endpoint protection solution. And Morphisec was able to prevent the attack of our moving target defense technology. And Morphisec also observed that the attack, even after it was published on threat analytics platforms like VirusTotal, continued to evade leading EDRs for nearly 2 weeks. It took a while to catch up. Morphisec was also hired to provide incident response services to the customer. So this limits our scope in this session to talk about a technical analysis of the ransomware. We will be providing a more end-to-end description of the incident in a follow-up session once we're able to disclose. So with that, I'll hand it over to Nadav. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oren. Hey, hi, everyone. So we will now begin with kind of an overview of the attack flow. And within the next slides, I will dive into each one of those steps and explain a bit more technical from a bit more technical approach. So in this attack, we will start our coverage in this webinar. We'll start from the point that the attacker, that the threat actor actually already obtained the domain admin due to customer confidentiality and ongoing incident response. We can't disclose more. So the attacker initiated the attack from the Active Directory. He hosted on the NELT logon shared folder 2 files. One of them is ims.bat, which is the first file in the infection, and the Sapphire ims.msi, which is an MSI executable that was used in a later on stage. This was delivered over a 24 hours period to many thousands of endpoints and servers. So the attack executed on each of the victims by utilizing a vulnerable Microsoft executable, which is a debugger that we'll see later on, and name it as a Sapphire MS client. This vulnerable application is vulnerable to side loading or search order hijacking technique. The attacker utilized it with a DLL that's called dbg.tng. This DLL was delivered with 2 additional files, encrypted files. One of them is the shellcode, which is used as a reflective loader to load within the memory the ransomware payload. And once it loads the ransomware executes and encrypts the system. So we'll start with the first stage, which is the attack delivery, the IMS bot that we spoke on. So it starts with setting up some UAC bypass within the registry, something that we see common in APTs. Then it does something that is pretty rare to see, and it checks for security solutions, and if it found the security solutions, it blocks the communication to them by adding a firewall rules. This can be resulted in alerts that are not going out from the system to the monitoring, and also many securities solutions today are based on cloud security detection, and this can also avoid cloud detection solution by using that. After that, it execute the MSI installer that we saw that is stored on the network shell. The MSI installer then extract an exe DLL and the two encrypted file, which are named with a OCS extension, to the following folder within the host, EC user public. And eventually, it will execute the Cepher IMS client exe, which is the legitimate Windows application, with the two OCS file as parameters. You can also note that the MSI installer, when it was uploaded at one time to VirusTotal after the attack, and it got only one detection. So here I will dive a bit more into the actual loader and the reflective shellcode that is used to load the ransomware. So at the top, you can see the command line, the CMD command line that was sent to the computer to execute in order to run the attack. It runs the executable with the two OCS files as parameters. So as you can see, the executable is a legitimate Microsoft executable, which is a symbolic debugger for Windows. And it's a legitimate tool that is vulnerable to DLL sideloading. The attacker drops the malicious DLL in the same directory, as you can see, which is the dbgng.dll, which then loads the OCS files in memory, both of them. It starts with decrypting the cell code and adjusts the memory protection, and also decrypts the ransomware itself in order to load it using the reflective shellcode. It's interesting also to note that we have seen this attack, this threat actor used in older attacks. In older attacks, he also utilized legitimate Windows Microsoft binaries. So he also used the legitimate executable binaries, and we assume that the threat actor really like using legitimate Microsoft applications, since they are more, they are less scanned by machine learning, scanner-based, and etc., because most of the time those executions are legitimate. So once the cell code is running, it's used solely as a reflective loader that eventually load the ransomware within the memory. So when we analyze the attack, we've came across a very common pattern in all of the attack stages. This pattern that we noticed is that the attacker really prefer to use like open source code that is available on GitHub and modify it so it will not be detected or will not be recognized in order to try and do classification for the threat actor or correlation to other attacks. So we can see that the dbgng DLL is very similar to some payloader library, and the cell code is also very similar to another one. here you can see side by side the Babuk that used in the attack, the decompiled code from the attack, and also the leak from the source code. We can see here that there are several similarities. The code structure, so the overall execution flow and the code structure really correlates to the Babuk. And also it's using the same encryption routine. One of the most characterizing function of any ransomware is the encryption routine. It's using the same one. And also the configuration that is provided to the ransomware is very, very similar. The only we saw some modification. The most recognized modification that we saw is that the attacker added a shadow copy deletion routine, since the original source code that used by Babuk was not implementing that. The attacker chose to implement it, and it's also worth noting that also malware and ransomware such as Black Matter and Conti ransomware did this, doing the same behavior with deleting the shadow copy. So, summarizing it, we can see, as I said, across all the chain using the open source code, which is very interesting. We don't see it in many attacks that all of the chain is based on open source code. This is something that really expands the potential for the evasion techniques for the attacker, and also it's much more how to attribute this attack to a specific threat actor or country or etc. Generally, it's very challenging to get some visibility into runtime because EDR, XDR, etc. are usually restricted to use hooking or event tracing for Windows. Assuming they are not tampered with, a lot of time it misses a lot of stuff. I will not go into too much details on that. And combining the threat actor by using a combination of different evasion techniques, it was successful with bypassing many security solutions that we have saw in our analysis. So basically, the execution within a legitimate Windows application, it's something that achieves it. Usage of encrypted file, the reflective loader shellcode, and so on. So it's clear to see that the threat actor know the weaknesses of monitoring and the scanning solutions in order to bypass them.
So it almost sounds like Threat Labs knows who the actor is. Is this something we can say a word about at this moment?
So currently we can't share any further details. It's we have this information. We know how the attacker exploited the network, how we propagated within the network. We already have documentation of it all, but due to confidentiality issues on this ongoing incident response, we can't share anymore. Sorry.
Yeah, got it. And do we often see this type of techniques of using leaked ransomware to be repackaged in this way? Is this something that is common?
It's not very common. It happened a few times back in the time. But it's a very strong approach to take, as I said, in order to avoid the attribution to specific threat groups or countries.
Can you say a few words about DLL side loading? Why a regular, like a trusted Microsoft application can be vulnerable to that? Can you say a few words about that?
Yeah, sure. So basically, there's a lot of softwares in the wild today that are coded this way to load libraries, or their own libraries or Windows libraries, and by not doing the implementation right, the application can be vulnerable to this search order hijacking, which means that it will look for, first of all, if it doesn't have like a specific path to go into and search the DLL, parse the environment variables of the Windows machine, and start by going to each folder and look for this file. But prior doing that, it will try to parse its own folder to see if the file it's within the own folder. So by using this technique, the attacker put the legitimate executor, which is vulnerable, and right inside the same folder, he put the DLL, which resulted in loading this DLL from the folder and not from the system directory, which the legitimate DLL is there. So it's like race condition.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, it sounds like from this description that, we have here a combination of conditions, the usage of leaked source of the Babuk ransomware and quite a lot of modifications that made it challenging to detect. But luckily, Morphisec was able to stop it and really minimize the damage to the customer. Before we move on, I do see another question here. So Morphisec, and it says Morphisec is also a cloud-driven security solution. Wouldn't it be susceptible to the attacker blocking the agent's access to the cloud tenant using the Windows firewall? So I know the answer to this, but it will be interesting to note Morphisec's unique mechanism and why we're able to block the attack. So Nadav, would you like to take that?
Yeah, sure. So by saying the cloud-driven security solution, so yes, we indeed, our servers are on the cloud and the agent talk to the servers, but the servers, from the agent perspective, the servers have only two responsibilities. One responsibility is to get the log and see them, and the other responsibility is to update, do classification. So all of the implementation of the detection and the prevention, it's in the agent itself. It's not cloud-based. Once the alerts is sent to the cloud just show what kind of threat it is. So if the attacker blocked Morphisec in the firewall, it will still prevent the attack because the agent is a solely autonomous protection. We don't use cloud-based protection at all. So this is a good point to mention. So some of the alerts indeed might not be visible in the console, but it was prevented on the machine, and the logs and everything is available on the machine.
So this attack might have been unique, but it takes into account shortcomings of other endpoint protection solutions. So we're all familiar with what AVs or EPPs do, combination of static analysis of files and detonation of the files, and EDRs that observe behaviors. But all these solutions are suspect to security gaps because of different evasive techniques, some of which we saw with this new Babuk variant, but also because what we just mentioned is that many of these solutions do rely on an active connectivity to query and to receive analytics and to query threats. And also they can be resource consuming to operate optimally. And I will not go through the entire coverage. So what Morphisec does and what's unique about Morphisec is we close this gap by only allowing trusted code to execute with a technology that basically morphs system resources, so attackers cannot inject malicious code into the runtime memory. So it's a way to close the gap. So Nadav, what would be the impact then that we've seen?
Yeah, so this is the actual scenario that happened in the customer. So the customer had two sites, site A and site B. Site B was covered with the Morphisec protector, and the other site was covered with other leading security solutions. So what we saw actually in the attack is, you remember, as I said in the question, the attacker started the attack, and the attacker also noticed that he started from site A, and he noticed that in site A, the security solution that they had there did alert but not prevented this attack. So we immediately added to the first delivery script the firewall rules that you have seen that blocks the communication. So by doing that, the attacker removed every visibility for the security solution to alert on. So it was not blocked and also like not alerted. And on the other side that we were installed, all of thousands of endpoints successfully prevented the attack. On the endpoints that indeed the attacker like tried to block the communication, it didn't help them because our protection is solely autonomous and doesn't rely on any kind of communication. So he couldn't do anything, like he executed it. He only had like a remote access. So he couldn't execute it via any attempt from its remote access. So those thousands of endpoints were protected and the other ones not. And I will continue with this topic. So we just covered this ransomware, which is a pretty advanced attack that the organization suffered from. So it's worth to mention that in Morphisec, every day we have a brilliant team of researchers that research all the brand new attacks, and we discovered new and targeted advanced persistent threats on a monthly basis. Most of them we don't talk about, we don't publish, just a few of them you can see in our blog. So on the tip of the iceberg of what we can share, so in half one in 2022, if you remember, Conti was a ransomware that was very active. Today they are not longer active anymore. So they were known to create a dedicated set of payloads for each victim. So they really like manually tailored attacks for each of the victims they attacked. And in Morphisec, we have prevented all of their variants and attacks in real time. We have seen that in more than 10 different customers that the Conti group got access to their network. But upon the operation time, the actual operation time of like spreading the ransomware, they spread the ransomware, but it could not execute and encrypt the files and the systems. And also in the recent 2 years, we've automatically prevented all of the CACbot variants. CACbot is known for regularly updating evasion techniques, and it's basically like used as a bridge for many threat actors to get access to organization, because usually the CACbot group, they from time to time they change the threat actors that they work with that delivers the payload. So by just looking on our statistics, we are sure that in 2023 we'll prevent much more dozens of brand new sophisticated and evasive attacks. I really recommend you to follow our blog and our researchers, since we always keep things up to date that are very interesting and nice.
Yeah, Nadav, we definitely have also sat together personally, and I think we have some hair-raising stories of attacks that we see. I think it's very special to be part of an organization that's at that point. But to what we mentioned, we do have visibility to the resident EDRs in those incidents that Nadav spoke about. And specifically with the Babuk ransomware, we observed other EDRs failing to prevent the attack. As Nadav said, there was a reconnaissance stage that lasted about 2 weeks, and then apparently the previous an IR team of the customer uploaded the files, and then we started to, we see detection by other EDRs. So if we mentioned Sentinel-1 and CrowdStrike, one of them started detecting after about 72 hours. The other one took over a week. Other EDRs, it took longer until they updated their detection logic. But throughout all of our customers, we continually see how Morphisec augments the protection provided by the EDR. So EDRs are important. They provide a lot of value and an important baseline, but we're definitely there to prevent those advanced and evasive attacks. And in fact, Lawrence Pingree, VP analyst from Gartner, recently said over LinkedIn that 2023 will be the year of the moving target defense. Now, this isn't a marketing session. This is just to talk about advanced attacks and also to raise awareness where there are limitations and where you should try to seek additional solutions. With that, I see we do have several resources online, but we do have additional questions. So if there's similarities to the source code, will there be a decryptor available for this variant soon? Is a question.
I don't believe so. I don't really recall the full process of the encryption routine in Babuk, but the encryption routine itself, it always gets it needs a private key in order to do the decryption, unless there is not nobody finds something like a defect or some kind of bug in the code, some kind of vulnerability in the code to get the file decrypted. It's not possible to decrypt ransomware files. So since the Babuk code is open source based, so if there was some kind of vulnerability in it, or it was fixed already, or it's not there. So it really depends on the ransomware and also like how the attack works and etc. It's along the way, if there is some kind of vulnerabilities, sometimes it's possible to decrypt the files.
And if you were unfortunately victims of these attacks, I mean, besides signing up to Morphisec, my 2 cents, right? That there is a long way to do in establishing preventative measures, hardening the perimeter, creating defense in them for endpoint protection. But if you do get hit, right, bring in a highly professional incident response team. Incidentally, Morphisec has that as well. Nadav?
Yeah, what I would say in this specific attack scenario, the attacker was pretty sophisticated. So it's very, very, very important to get a very skilled incident response team, because it's very possible for amateurs and juniors to miss indications that the attacker left like breadcrumbs over the network in order to gain access in the future. So it's very, very important to get this right.
Fantastic. And, I mentioned before, we promote industry-wide collaboration. We do have analytics that we share with vendors. We always welcome other EDR vendors to collaborate with us and share results of our findings, and hope to expand that in the future. So with that, I think this has been an exciting session. Thank you very much, Nadav. Thank you everyone who participated. Please follow us on our social media and other venues, because we will be having a follow-up session with a more deeper end-to-end analysis of this incident. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a happy holidays.